In 2023, Steph Curry was casually browsing through social media when a video completely changed his day. His former babysitter, 81-year-old Dorothy Johnson, was still working cleaning offices during the early morning hours to survive, her arthritic hands gripping cleaning tools with the same determination she once used to shape the character of a future star. But to understand why this discovery broke the NBA star's heart and led him to a decision that would shock the world, we need to go back to 1994, when an extraordinary woman entered the Curry family's life and planted seeds of greatness in a 6-year-old boy whom she treated as her own son. You can perceive that some of the most important people in our lives are not those who gave us life, but those who taught us how to live it with dignity, purpose, and compassion. It was spring of 1994 when Del Curry, at the height of his career as a shooter for the Charlotte Hornets, realized that his family needed help. The constant NBA travels meant that Sonia was alone with 6-year-old Steph and 4-year-old Seth more frequently than any father would like. "We need someone special," Sonia said to Del during a difficult conversation about balancing career and family. "Not just someone to watch the children, but someone who will help shape them when we're not here." It was through a recommendation from the local church that they met Dorothy Johnson, a 52-year-old widow who had spent 25 years as an elementary school teacher before retiring early to care for her sick husband. After Robert Johnson died of cancer, Dorothy discovered that her early retirement wasn't sufficient to maintain the standard of living she had planned. "I don't need a job," Dorothy said during the first interview, her voice carrying that gentle authority that only experienced educators possess. "I need purpose, and children have always been my purpose." How is it possible that someone can enter our lives at the exact moment when we need them, as if the universe conspired to place the right people in the right places when we most need guidance? From the first day, Dorothy established that her role went far beyond basic supervision. She arrived at 7 in the morning, even when Del was home, because her mission was to teach values that transcended basketball or any specific activity. "Steph," Dorothy said on the first day, kneeling down to be at eye level with the energetic 6-year-old boy, "I'm going to teach you something very important. Greatness comes from character, not from talent. Talent is what you're born with. Character is what you choose to build every day." Steph, still too young to fully comprehend the words, felt the importance in Dorothy's tone of voice. There was something about the way she spoke that made him stop moving and really listen. During the first months, Dorothy carefully observed Steph's behavioral patterns. He was naturally competitive, energetic, and already showed clear signs of athletic talent. But Dorothy also noticed tendencies that needed to be directed. Impatience when things didn't go his way, frustration when he lost casual games, and he occasionally treated other children in a superior manner because he was the son of an NBA player. "Steph, come here," Dorothy called one afternoon after seeing him bragging to the neighbors about his famous father. "I want to tell you a story about 2 boys." Naturally, this leads us to a truth about childhood education, that the most important lessons rarely come through direct sermons, but through stories that plant seeds in the imagination that bloom years later. "There were 2 boys," Dorothy began, sitting with Steph on the living room sofa. "One was very talented in sports, the other was just ordinary. The talented one always won, was always praised, always felt special. The ordinary one always lost, but always helped others, always said, 'Thank you,' always treated everyone well." "Which of the 2 do you think people liked more?" Dorothy asked. Steph, with the honesty of a 6-year-old child, answered, "The one who always won?" "No," Dorothy said gently. People liked the ordinary boy because he made them feel important. And do you know what happened when they grew up? Steph shook his head. The ordinary boy became extraordinary because he had learned that making others feel good is the most important skill in life. And the talented boy ended up alone because he never learned to treat people well. What's most impressive is how certain lessons penetrate a child's soul even when they can't articulate their impact, shaping decisions and behaviors that emerge years later when the person matures. Dorothy had simple but inflexible rules. Steph should greet all adults he encountered, always say please and thank you, help with household chores even when he didn't want to, and never, ever brag about achievements or family advantages. If you're special, Dorothy would say, let other people discover that through your actions, not your words. During basketball games in the backyard, Dorothy always emphasized effort over results. When Steph made difficult shots, she didn't get excited about the talent. When he missed, she praised the attempt. Dorothy, Steph asked one afternoon after a particularly frustrating practice, why don't you get happy when I make beautiful shots? I do get happy, Dorothy responded, but not surprised. You have natural talent. What makes me proud is when you help Seth improve, when you don't give up after missing, when you congratulate other boys who play well against you. How many times in life are we lucky enough to find someone who sees not only who we are, but who we can become, and has the wisdom and patience to guide us in that transformation? The years with Dorothy were formative in ways that Steph would only understand decades later. She taught him to make his own bed, wash dishes, help with meal preparation. Real men take care of themselves and help others, was one of her favorite phrases. But perhaps the most important lesson Dorothy taught was about genuine human connection. She always stopped to talk with school staff, greeted supermarket cashiers by name, and treated service people with the same respect she would treat any celebrity. Treat everyone well, Dorothy constantly repeated, because you never know who you'll meet on the way back home. In 1999, when Dell retired from the NBA and the family no longer needed a full-time babysitter, the farewell was emotional for everyone. Dorothy had become much more than an employee. She was family. Miss Dorothy, Steph said on the last day, now 11 years old and taller, how will I remember everything you taught me? Dorothy smiled and took from her neck a small wooden crucifix that had belonged to her late husband. I want you to have this, she said, placing it around Steph's neck. Not to remember me, but to remember that you are special, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. Steph held the crucifix with reverence. I promise I'll never forget everything you taught me. And I promise, Dorothy responded, that I'll always be proud of the man you're going to become. Greatness comes from character, not from talent. And as Steph walked toward adolescence and then world stardom, the seeds Dorothy had planted would continue growing, shaping his decisions, relationships, and understanding about responsibility far beyond any basketball court. What neither of them knew in that moment of farewell was that life would take Dorothy down difficult paths that would test her own strength and determination, while Steph would soar to heights that would transform the mention of his name into a synonym for sporting excellence, until destiny would reunite them again in a way that neither could have imagined. The iced tea following years took Steph to world stardom, but somehow the accelerated life of fame distanced him from the woman who had been fundamental in his formation, creating an emotional void that he couldn't always identify. While he broke records and won titles in front of millions of spectators, Dorothy faced silent battles in her small house in Charlotte, struggling against difficulties that she would never allow to become burdens for the boy she had helped raise. You can perceive that life has a cruel way of separating people who love each other through circumstances that neither controls, creating distances that grow not from lack of affection, but from lack of opportunity for connection. In 2006, when Steph arrived at Davidson College, he occasionally thought about Dorothy. During moments of academic pressure or athletic frustration, the lessons about perseverance and character that she had taught echoed in his mind. The crucifix she had given him remained always, around his neck, hidden under his uniform shirts. "Sometimes I feel like I have a voice in my head reminding me to do the right thing," Steph said to Dell during a phone conversation from college. "It's strange, but it's as if Miss Dorothy is still teaching me things." "That's called conscience," Dell laughed, "and you're lucky to have had someone like her to help develop it." Steph tried a few times to find Dorothy during visits to Charlotte, but discovered that she had moved after financial problems. The old address led to a different family, and without social media or easy-to-find records, the trail had gone cold. How is it possible that in an era of infinite digital connectivity, important people can simply disappear from our lives, leaving only memories and influences that shape us, even in physical absence? While Steph transitioned from Davidson to the NBA in 2009, married Isha in 2011, and began building a family and historic career, Dorothy was facing very different realities in Charlotte. The early retirement that had seemed adequate in the 1990s became insufficient as living costs increased and health problems began to appear. In 2010, at 68 years old, Dorothy was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, a condition that required expensive medication and constant monitoring. "I can't ask anyone for help," Dorothy said to her neighbor and only close friend, Martha Williams. "I raised that boy to be independent and responsible. It would be hypocritical of me to depend on him now." Martha tried to argue. "Dorothy, you didn't raise Steph. You helped him when he needed it. Now you need help." "No," Dorothy responded with the same determination she used to teach difficult lessons decades before. "I did my job. He has his life, his family, his success. I won't be a burden." Naturally, this leads us to a devastating truth about pride, that sometimes our determination not to bother others can lead us to suffer unnecessarily, depriving people we love of the opportunity to demonstrate gratitude and care. In 2012, at 70 years old, Dorothy made a decision that broke her own heart. She returned to the job market. Her options were limited, without updated technology for modern office work, without physical strength for jobs that required much movement. She found employment as a night cleaner in a commercial building in downtown Charlotte. "At least it's honest," Dorothy said to Martha, "and working at night means I can maintain my dignity during the day." The work was difficult for someone 70 years old, vacuuming carpets, cleaning bathrooms, emptying trash cans, polishing surfaces. Her hands, which once offered sweetness in consoling hugs and firmness in necessary lessons, now held cleaning chemicals and suffered from arthritis that worsened each year. But Dorothy found purpose even in the most humble work. She arrived punctually at 11, at night, worked meticulously until 5 in the morning, and treated the few nighttime colleagues with the same kindness she had always shown to all people. What's most impressive is how truly noble people manage to maintain dignity and purpose even in circumstances that would test anyone's soul, transforming necessary work into meaningful service. During all these years, Dorothy followed Steph's career on television. She watched every important Warriors game that aired on national TV, cheered, silently in her small living room, and felt maternal pride whenever commentators praised not only Steph's talent, but his character and leadership. "That boy I helped raise is making history," Dorothy would occasionally say to Martha. "And look how he treats people, always respectful, always grateful. I did my job well." Martha frequently suggested, "Why don't you try to contact him? I'm sure he'd be happy to hear from you." "I don't want him to think I'm trying to take advantage of his success," Dorothy always responded. "Besides, what would I say? 'Hi, Steph, it's Miss Dorothy. I'm working as a cleaner?' No. He remembers me as someone strong and wise. I want him to continue thinking that way." How many times in life does our love for someone lead us to decisions that, although well-intentioned, deprive us of the connection that we both need and deserve? In 2020, when Dorothy turned 78 years old, the COVID-19 pandemic brought additional challenges. As an elderly person with diabetes, she was at high risk, but couldn't stop working because she needed the money for medications and basic expenses. She wore double masks, brought her own disinfectant, and worked even more alone than before. During the most difficult months of the pandemic, when many buildings were almost empty, Dorothy was sometimes the only person in the building during her night shifts. "At least I can't contaminate anyone working alone," she joked with Martha, always finding a way to see the positive side even in the most difficult situations. In 2023, at 81 years old, Dorothy was still working 6 nights a week. Her arthritis had worsened significantly, making simple tasks like wringing cleaning cloths into exercises of painful endurance. But she persisted, driven by the same determination she had used to teach Steph that greatness comes from character, not from talent. It was during one of these nights of solitary work that Kevin Torres, a 23-year-old security guard who worked in the same building, decided to record a video that would change everything. "Miss Dorothy," Kevin said one night while watching her methodically clean each desk in an office, "you never really told me properly about this story of having taken care of Steph Curry. Tell me again?" Dorothy stopped cleaning and smiled, always willing to talk about the boy she had helped raise. That boy was special from a young age, not because of talent, although he had plenty, but because of his heart. He always listened when I taught about treating people well. Kevin, without Dorothy realizing, was recording the conversation with his cell phone. "Do you miss him?" Kevin asked. Dorothy was quiet for a moment, then responded with emotional honesty. "Every day. But I'm proud of the man he became, and he learned to fly on his own, which was what I wanted. Greatness comes from character, not from talent." And while Dorothy continued her night work, shaped by the same virtues she had taught decades before, she didn't know that Kevin Torres would post that video on his social media that same early morning, initiating a chain of events that would finally reunite two people who should never have lost contact, proving that true love finds ways to overcome even the most stubborn barriers of pride and circumstances. The video went viral in a matter of hours, spreading across social media like waves on a tranquil lake, until it reached Steph Curry's cell phone on a Tuesday morning that began ordinary and ended up completely transforming his understanding about responsibility, gratitude, and the true meaning of family. Upon seeing Dorothy, older, more fragile, but still radiating the same dignity he remembered from childhood, Steph felt an overwhelming mixture of emotion, nostalgia, and guilt that motivated him to immediate action that would surprise the entire world. You can perceive that sometimes the universe conspires to correct our most painful mistakes, using modern technology to reunite hearts that should have remained connected, and transforming coincidences into miracles that completely redefine our priorities. It was 9 in the morning when Sarah Chen, the Warriors' social media manager, called Steph with urgency in her voice. "Steph, you need to see something. It's going viral on your social media and on Twitter, and your name is being mentioned thousands of times." "Is it some controversy?" Steph asked, immediately alert. In the social media era, viral mentions weren't always good news. "No, it's emotional. Someone posted a video of an elderly lady who says she was your babysitter. The video already has 2 million views in 12 hours. Steph felt his heart accelerate. "Send me the link now." When the video loaded on his phone, Steph recognized Dorothy immediately, despite the 24 years that had passed. She was thinner, moving more slowly, with completely gray hair. But there was something unmistakable about her posture, the way she spoke, the dignity that emanated even while cleaning office desks at 2 in the morning. How is it possible that recognition can be so instantaneous and devastating? Steph felt as if he were looking through a window into a past he had partially forgotten, but which now reorganized itself in his memory with crystalline clarity. In the video, Kevin Torres was asking, "Miss Dorothy, tell me about when you took care of Steph Curry." Dorothy's response hit Steph like an emotional punch. That boy was special from a young age, not because of talent, although he had plenty, but because of his heart. He always listened when I taught about treating people well. Steph had to pause the video, tears already forming in his eyes. Dorothy's voice sounded exactly as he remembered. Firm, caring, full of practical wisdom. When Kevin asked, "Do you miss him?" Dorothy's response completely broke Steph's heart. "Every day. But I'm proud of the man he became. And he learned to fly on his own, which was what I wanted." "My God," Steph whispered to himself, bringing his hand to the crucifix he still wore around his neck after all these years. "She's still working, at 81 years old, and I didn't even know." What's most impressive is how guilt can hit someone instantly and absolutely, especially when we realize that people we love were suffering while we lived in abundance, not out of malice, but out of ignorance of their needs. Steph immediately called Dell. "Dad, did you see Miss Dorothy's video?" "I just saw it," Dell responded, his own voice choked. "Son, how did we lose contact with her? How did we let this happen?" "I don't know, but I'm going to correct this now. I need you to help me find her today. Today, Dad." In the next 2 hours, Steph mobilized a small team of assistants, private investigators, and contacts in Charlotte to locate Dorothy Johnson. The process he feared would be complicated ended up being simple. She had been working in the same building for 11 years, in downtown Charlotte. "I want a plane to Charlotte in 2 hours," Steph said to his personal assistant. "And I want flowers. The most beautiful ones you can find. And cancel everything I have today. Everything." During the flight to Charlotte, Steph watched Dorothy's video dozens of times, each viewing revealing details that moved him even more. The way she moved, clearly feeling arthritic pain. The simplicity of her work uniform. The fluorescent office light illuminating her aged face, but still radiating kindness. Naturally, this leads us to a truth about regret, that sometimes we need to see visual evidence of our negligence to fully understand the emotional cost of our omissions, no matter how well-intentioned they were. Steph arrived at the office building in Charlotte at 2 in the morning, exactly the time he knew Dorothy would be working. The night security guard, a different man, from Kevin Torres, initially hesitated to let Steph enter. "I know this seems strange," Steph said, "but Dorothy Johnson works here cleaning offices, and I need to see her. It's urgent." Are you, are you Steph Curry? The security guard asked, incredulous. Yes, and Dorothy raised me when I was little. I just found out she's still working, and I came to thank her personally. The security guard, moved by Steph's obvious sincerity, took him to the 12th floor, where Dorothy was vacuuming the carpet in a conference room, wearing headphones to block out the noise. When Dorothy turned around and saw Steph standing in the doorway with a bouquet of flowers, she initially thought she was dreaming. "Miss Dorothy," Steph said softly, his voice breaking with emotion, "it's me, Steph. I came to thank you for everything and apologize for taking so long to find you." Dorothy slowly removed her headphones, as if processing an impossible vision. "Steph? My boy? What are you doing here?" How many times in life do we witness moments that seem to pause time, where emotions accumulated over decades concentrate into seconds of pure recognition and unconditional love? "I should have looked for you years ago," Steph said, approaching with tears flowing freely down his face. "I should never have let you leave my life." Dorothy dropped the vacuum cleaner and opened her arms, and Steph approached for a hug that lasted several minutes, both crying silently. 24 years of separation, dissolving in the warmth of a connection that had never really disappeared. "My boy has grown up," Dorothy finally said, holding Steph's face as she did when he was a child. "Look at the man you've become." "Because of you," Steph responded. "Everything good that I am came from the values you taught me." They talked for 2 hours in the empty office, Dorothy telling about her financial difficulties, health problems, years of hard work. Steph listening with growing horror at how he had failed to be present for the woman who had been fundamental in his formation. "Why didn't you ever look for me?" Steph asked. "I would have helped with anything." "Because," Dorothy responded with the same firm wisdom of decades before, "I taught you to be independent and responsible. It would be hypocritical of me to depend on you. Besides, you had your life, your family. I did my job. I helped you become a good man." Some of life's most profound revelations come when we discover that our success sometimes blinds us to the needs of the people who helped us achieve it. And that early morning in an empty office in Charlotte, Steph Curry faced the reality that he had allowed pride and circumstances to separate him from the woman who had shaped him, but also discovered that it's never too late to correct mistakes of the heart when true love still pulses between people. What Steph did in the following days not only completely transformed Dorothy's life, but redefined how the world sees responsibility, gratitude, and the true meaning of honoring those who shaped us when we were most vulnerable. The decision he made that early morning in Charlotte initiated a chain of events that would prove that some of the most powerful actions are born not from obligation, but from pure love and belated but genuine recognition. You can perceive that there is a profound difference between performative charity and authentic gratitude, and that when we act moved by true love, the impact extends far beyond the people directly involved, creating waves of inspiration that touch hearts around the world. "Miss Dorothy," Steph said before leaving the building that early morning, "you will never work cleaning offices again. Never again. This ends today." "Steph, dear," Dorothy protested gently, "I can't accept charity. You taught me better values than that." "It's not charity," Steph responded, holding Dorothy's aged hands. "It's family, taking care of family. It's an adult son finally having the chance to give back to the woman who raised him. And besides," he smiled through the tears, "you still have work to do." "What work?" Dorothy asked, confused. "Teaching my children the same values you taught me. Cannon, Ryan, Riley and Caius need Miss Dorothy as much as I needed her. If you'll accept. How is it possible that a proposal can simultaneously honor the past and create hope for the future? Dorothy felt her heart filling with renewed purpose. In the following 3 days, Steph mobilized an operation that impressed even his most experienced assistants. He bought an elegant but comfortable house 10 minutes from his own house in Atherton, completely furnished and adapted for Dorothy's needs, including handrails, non-slip floors, and an emergency medical system. He established a trust fund that would guarantee Dorothy first-class medical care for the rest of her life, including diabetes specialists, physical therapy for arthritis, and any treatment that could improve her quality of life. But the gesture that most moved Dorothy was when Steph arrived in Charlotte with the entire family, Isha, Cannon, Ryan, Riley, and little Caius, to personally meet the woman who had shaped their father. "Children," Steph said, kneeling down to be at his children's height, "I want you to meet Miss Dorothy. She taught me everything I know about being a good man. And now she's going to teach you too." Cannon, now 11 years old, approached Dorothy with the respectful curiosity that Steph had demonstrated at the same age. "Miss Dorothy, Dad said you taught him to be kind to everyone." "And he learned well," Dorothy responded, her eyes shining as she saw traces of Steph in the boy's features. "Now I can teach you too, if you want." Naturally, this leads us to a truth about circles of love, that the best lessons transcend generations when they are transmitted by people who genuinely care about character, not just success. Dorothy's move to California was celebrated in a way she had never imagined possible. Steph organized a special ceremony at the Chase Center during halftime of a Warriors game against the Charlotte Hornets, a coincidence that seemed orchestrated by destiny. "Today I want to honor someone who changed my life," Steph said into the microphone at center court, with Dorothy beside him, visibly emotional but radiant in an elegant dress that Isha had chosen especially for the occasion. "This is Dorothy Johnson, who raised me from 6 to 11 years old and taught me that greatness comes from character, not from talent." The crowd of 18,000 people stood in ovation, but Steph hadn't finished. "Miss Dorothy worked as a cleaner until she was 81 years old, because I was too foolish to look for her and thank her adequately. Today, that changes." Steph held Dorothy's hand. "From today on, she is officially Grandma Dorothy to my children and special family values consultant for the Golden State Warriors." What's most impressive is how acts of public gratitude can inspire other people to reflect on their own responsibilities toward those who shaped them, creating a culture of recognition and intergenerational care. Steph also announced the creation of the Dorothy Johnson Foundation, dedicated to supporting elderly caregivers in situations of financial vulnerability, especially those who dedicated their lives to shaping children. "Miss Dorothy is not unique," Steph explained during the foundation's launch. "There are thousands of Dorothy Johnsons, babysitters, teachers, mentors, who shaped lives and now need support. This foundation exists to ensure that none of them have to work in difficult conditions at 80 years old." Dorothy became much more than a beneficiary. She became an active spokesperson for the foundation, visiting other elderly caregivers, sharing her story, and inspiring families to reconnect with important people from their past. 6 months after moving to California, Dorothy had established herself in a routine that filled her with purpose. Every morning, she helped Cannon and Ryan with homework before school, teaching not only academic subjects, but the same life lessons she had taught their father. "Cannon," Dorothy said one morning, when the boy got frustrated with a math problem, "remember what I always say. Greatness comes from character, not from talent. That includes persistence when things get difficult. Like when Dad was little? Cannon asked. Exactly like when Dad was little. He also got frustrated sometimes, but I learned that special boys don't give up. They take a deep breath and try again. During the afternoons, Dorothy frequently accompanied Steph to practice, watching with maternal pride as he practiced the shots that had become legendary worldwide. How many times in life do we have the opportunity to see seeds we planted decades before bloom into greatness that surpasses our wildest expectations? Dorothy experienced this daily. One year. After the reunion, Steph organized a special surprise for Dorothy's 82nd birthday. He flew Martha Williams, Dorothy's neighbor and best friend in Charlotte, to California, reuniting the two women who had supported each other during the most difficult years. "Dorothy," Martha said during the birthday dinner, "remember when you used to tell me you were proud of the boy you had helped raise? Look where that pride brought you." "No," Dorothy corrected, with the wisdom that always characterized her. "Look where true love brought us. Steph didn't do this out of obligation. He did it out of love. And that makes all the difference." At the party, Steph presented Dorothy with a special gift, a framed copy of the first page of a memoir he was writing about her, titled "The Woman Who Taught Me to Fly." "I want the world to know Miss Dorothy," Steph explained. "I want other people to understand that behind every successful person, there is someone who believed in them when they were still learning to believe in themselves." 2 years after the reunion, when Dorothy turned 83 years old, she was present in the stands when Steph broke the NBA's three-point record. After the game, instead of celebrating only with his immediate family, Steph went up to the stands and hugged Dorothy first. "Miss Dorothy," he whispered in her ear, "this record is ours. Everything I've achieved started with the values you taught me. Greatness comes from character, not from talent." And while Dorothy Johnson lived her golden years surrounded by the love of a family that had chosen to honor her adequately, she proved that some of life's most powerful influences come from people who never seek recognition, only plant seeds of kindness and trust that they will bloom at the right time. The story of Steph and Dorothy became a worldwide symbol of gratitude in action, inspiring thousands of people to reconnect with forgotten mentors, neglected caregivers, and formative figures who shaped their lives. It proved that it's never too late to say thank you, never too late to give back love, and never too late to transform regret into action that truly honors those who made us who we are.